A video that I put off for months on end because, well, I just really haven't had time. Then the start of the college football season. That means I've got to make predictions soon. I've got an idea. Why don't I do a results video and predictions video in the same video? This will be an interesting one. Hey, what's up everybody? It's Drew, better known as RockChalk01, and in this video, I'm going to be giving the results to my 2023-2024 Big 12 men's basketball predictions, as well as give you my Big 12 football predictions for the upcoming 2024 season. I will be honest, the timeliness of the results video was not going to be very well. I really just wanted to get done with school. I'm officially done with everything, and now I finally have time to do it properly. Not go through everything, but just at least show you the results and how well I did with my predictions back in October. And since the college football season is just around the corner, I mean a little over 2 months away, I think it's perfect time to just give you my predictions and get that video out of the way. So let's begin with the men's basketball results because, well, that technically happened first. Now, this one is going to be interesting because this will be the only time that I will do predictions for 14 teams because the past couple times it's been 10 and the future looks like it's going to be 16 or more. Now, I'm going to do this differently than what I've done in the past because I want to get through this quickly. So I'm going to show you a side-by-side comparison of my predictions and what actually happened in the Big 12 standings. And it's the same rules apply. If I'm one position off either way, I'm going to get a point. If I get it right on the nose, it's 3 points. So without further ado, here's the results to my predictions.
Okay, my predictions are on the left. The actual results are on the right. I'm going to go through my stuff from 14th to 1st and where they ended up finishing on the actual results. Also going through if teams gave me a point. So let's begin. 14th, I had UCF. Unfortunately, I get this one wrong. They ended up finishing 12th. That's 2 positions off. No points. 13th, I had Oklahoma, and the Sooners exceeded my expectations, finishing 4 positions off my predictions. They finished 9th. So again, 0 points. 12th, I had Cincinnati. The Bearcats actually get me on the board as they finished 1 position off of my predictions. They actually exceeded them by finishing in 11th. So now I have 1. West Virginia in 11th place. Unfortunately, the West Virginia Mountaineers did worse than I thought. They finished 14th. That's 3 positions off. No points there. 10th place, I had Texas Tech. Probably the biggest head scratcher as the Red Raiders really exceeded my expectations and finished 4th. That's 6 positions off. That's 0 points. 9th, I had BYU. Thought they would finish in the lower half of the conference. They actually finished in the top 5 and 5th. That's 4 positions off. Also 0 points. Oklahoma State in 8th. Thought the Cowboys would look decent, but Bryce Thompson's injury really brought them down, and the Pokes finished 13th. That's 5 positions off, also 0 points. 7th was the Iowa State Cyclones in my predictions, but they exceeded expectations and also won the Big 12 tournament, but in the regular season, they finished 2nd place. 5 positions off, that's also 0 points. 6th place, I had TCU. Unfortunately, they did worse than I expected and finished 8th. I'm kicking myself for this one. That's 2 positions off. That is 0 points. 5th place, I had Kansas State. And I thought the Wildcats would do really well. 2nd year under Jerome Tang. But they did not reach expectations whatsoever and finished 10th. 5 positions off, also 0 points. 4th, I had Texas. They finished in the top half of the conference, but actually did worse than I thought. They finished 7th place. That's 3 positions off, also 0 points. 3rd place, I had Houston, and I'm kicking myself for not having the Cougars in the top 2, because that would have guaranteed me at least 1 point. And unfortunately, Houston won the Big 12, finishing in 1st. That's 2 positions off, 0 points. Baylor does get me a point here as I predicted them second. They ended up finishing in third. Thank goodness. So another point for me. I now have 2 points. And finally, the one that really hurts the most. I predicted Kansas to win the Big 12 and they ended up finishing 6th. It's the worst finish for KU since the 1999-2000 season. And it's the worst position-wise since 1989. Good Lord. That's 5 positions off. No points there. So I ended up finishing my predictions with a total of 2 points.
Yeah, okay, let's just say it bluntly. Those were the worst predictions I've ever done in my life. But those get pushed off to the side. We now have to focus on something else, which is my Big 12 football predictions. I think this might mean a wardrobe change. Better. So on to the football predictions. We say goodbye to Oklahoma and Texas. We say hello to Colorado, Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah. Basically meaning that I'm going to predict instead of 14 teams like I did last year, it'll be 16 teams. Which means there's a better chance that I will do horrible with these. Yeah, basically what I'm going to do is go through where I think each team will sit, going from 16th all the way to 1st. And yeah, let me know in the comments what you guys think. But here's my predictions for the football season.
16th, Houston.
Gonna put it short and sweet. They're gonna suck. The Cougars went 4-8 last year and fired Dana Holgorsen. I did not expect them to fire him, but here we are. And they just hired Willie Fritz to be the head coach, who was at Tulane for years on end, and he had 2 incredible campaigns these past 2 seasons, which includes winning the Cotton Bowl against USC 2 years ago. I think this Houston team is going to struggle because over half of the productivity from last season is gone because they went to the transfer portal. And their conference schedule isn't favorable either. Iowa State, Kansas, Arizona, Utah, TCU, Iowa State. There's 6 losses right there. Heck, even their non-conference isn't favorable. A UNLV team that went 9-5 a year ago, going on the road to Oklahoma. And then you get Rice at home, which you lost to him last year, but I think you edge him out. Realistically, I see Houston going 1-11. I don't remember the last time a Houston team went 1-11. I gotta say that the Cougars are finishing dead last.
15th, Cincinnati.
They were dead last a year ago. I think they'll improve by 1 spot. Honestly, I think they'll be around the same as what they were the year prior. I mean, they did have some turnover in the transfer portal, but got guys as well. Their non-conference slate, I mean, it is interesting, but I think it will be easy for them to get through. They get Towson at home, as well as Miami of Ohio, which they lost to last year. The only loss in the non-conference slate that could potentially happen would be Pitt. I mean, Pitt's not great either, but I think the Panthers just edge out the Bearcats. And then going over to the conference slate, Texas Tech, Kansas State, Iowa State, West Virginia, Deion Sanders. I mean, Arizona State, you could potentially win. But the game that I think Cincinnati ends up pulling out is the game against Houston. I think they'll edge out the Cougars, even though Houston is terrible and so is Cincinnati. I think the Bearcats get this one. I kind of have them going 3-9 as well, just like last year. But I think they improve from being dead last to a position out of last. I've got the Bearcats in 15th.
14th, Arizona State.
Okay, I know I'm going to be wrong on how to do this. I don't know if it's this. I don't know if it's this or this or this. So let's see. Here. The Forks are going to stick in the mud. 14th, I've got one of the newbies of the Big 12, Arizona State. I just don't know much about the Sun Devils to really give them high hopes. I mean, they weren't very good last year. I don't remember if they made a bowl game. I know they had Herm Edwards as the head coach, and then he sucked.
Hello?
Just looking at their schedule, I mean, their non-conference slate, they should do fine. They should go 2-1. The only loss I see them having is going on the road to Mississippi State. But their conference schedule, whew, it's a doozy. At Texas Tech, at home against Kansas, at home against Utah, at Oklahoma State, at Kansas State, and at Arizona. Those I see as all being defeats. The only game that I could see him winning in Big 12 play would be against Cincinnati. I just think the Bearcats are just a bit weaker than Arizona State, so at least they won't go winless in their first year. Also, them beating Cincinnati is the reason why they're in 14th instead of tied for 14th. So there you go, Arizona State fans. I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt. So that's why I've got the Sun Devils in 14th.
13th, Baylor.
I'm putting this out here now. If Baylor is terrible, Dave Aranda is gone. Oh boy, these last 3 years have been a whirlwind for this team because they started out being title contenders, then 6-6 make a bowl game, and then they plummeted the year prior. Now this is basically life and death for Baylor, and I think it's death.
Damn!
The squad really hasn't returned much of nothing, and looking at their schedule, doesn't look favorable either. I mean, they go 2-1 in technical non-conference play because their game against Utah in Salt Lake City is not a conference game. The only win I see them having is against Houston, in Houston. Other than that, I see them losing every other game. And I believe Dave Aranda gets fired. So, yeah, not much love for Baylor here, but I do give him the edge over Arizona State. I've got him 13th.
12th, Colorado.
Hey, Colorado, welcome back. Hope you don't hate me for this. So I've got Colorado in 12th. The Buffs are very, very hard to really decide where they're going to end up. I took the lower end just because of what they had done the previous year, which was go 4-8. I just don't see that reflecting in their first year back in the Big 12. Now, don't get me wrong, they have the guys. Travis Hunter, Shedeur Sanders, a lot of 5-star recruits, all thanks to the mindset that is Deion Primetime Sanders. But with all the talks of the hostile environment there, I just don't see it reflecting very well. That also goes with their schedule because their non-conference slate is on the tougher side. They have North Dakota State at home. They go on the road to Nebraska, and then they're on the road at Colorado State. Now, I think they lose the game in Lincoln. The game in Fort Collins, which is Colorado State, I think they blow them out. But the game that's really up in the air is the one against North Dakota State. I could see Colorado losing that game, but I'm giving them the win. And their conference slate really doesn't help them either. Utah, Arizona, Oklahoma State, Kansas, and Texas Tech. I think they pull out a couple wins over a Cincinnati or a Baylor, but the other ones, I think they'll be close games, but I think they end up losing them. And I have the Buffs going once again 4-8. And to be honest, if it's another 4-8 season, I think Deion goes bye-bye. But for right now, I know there's a lot of high on Colorado, but I don't see it happening. I've got the Buffs in 12th.
11th, BYU.
I thought highly of them last year. Not this year. 5-7 last year after a lot of people had high hopes for them. And a lot of people now are saying that they're going to be one of the worst teams in the conference. However, their home field advantage of LaVell Edwards Stadium, I think, will help them win some games that a lot of people don't think. I mean, they have a solid squad. I mean, Kalani Sitake has some dudes, but it just really hasn't produced in a conference fashion. I mean, I take a look at their schedule. I think they'll go 2-1 in non-con play. I think they'll lose at SMU. They do have some tough opponents in the conference slate. I mean, they've got Arizona, Oklahoma State, the Holy War with Utah, as well as Kansas State. But there's a couple respectable wins that I can see them having. I can see them going on the road to Waco and defeating Baylor, and also winning their final 2 games of the year, which is against Arizona State and Houston. But overall, I see them finishing 5-7 like last year and just missing out on a bowl game, and they're in the lower portion of the conference. I have BYU in 11th.
10th, UCF.
They'll be fine, but they will squeak bowl eligibility. Gus Malzahn's squad looks like it is poised to have an incredible year, but I'm not too thrilled about it. I have them going 6-6 this year just because I don't know how well the team will coincide with each other. I mean, RJ Harvey is going to be a stud this year and is going to be a bona fide 1,000, maybe 1,100 yard rusher for UCF. The non-conference slate is favorable for them. I mean, 2 easy wins over New Hampshire, who's an FCS team, and Sam Houston. But then they go to Gainesville, Florida in the middle of the season, and I'm just with that. I could definitely see UCF pulling off a win, but I think the Gators will edge them just because it is in the swamp. But I could see UCF pulling out a 6-6 season by beating 4 conference opponents: Colorado, Cincinnati, BYU, and Arizona State. And that will move them up the ranks a bit and will claim bowl eligibility. Also, the reason why I have UCF ahead of BYU is because, well, they play against each other, and I think that UCF would beat BYU, so they get the nod. So, yeah, those are the reasons why I have UCF in 10th.
9th, TCU.
You know, I see this as a mediocre year for these guys. 9th place, I've got TCU. After making the national championship game 2 years ago and having a horrible 5-7 year last year, I think they'll still be around that 5, maybe 6 win season. This will be the year where we truly find TCU's identity. And I see their identity being towards the middle of the pack. This is also thanks in large part to their schedule. Non-conference slate at Stanford, I think they'll win. Versus LIU, they win. But they go on the road to Dallas to take on SMU in their rivalry game. And I think they lose once again. Now, I think they get the edge over a couple teams. They'll go 4-5 in conference play and make a bowl game. Like I see them beating UCF, which basically kind of gives them the edge in these predictions. Also, I have them beating Houston and then going on the road and beating Baylor, as well as going on the road and beating Cincinnati. Now, the question becomes, does this get Sonny Dykes fired? Probably not, because he will make a bowl game. I think that really saves his job. But I don't know. He's probably on the hot seat after this. But I think TCU becomes bowl eligible for the second time in 3 years under Dykes. But I don't see him doing well in terms of the standings in the Big 12. So, I've got the Horned Frogs in 9th.
8th, Iowa State.
I have them in the upper half of the conference, but when it comes to the other 7 teams ahead of them, I don't think they'll be better than them. These guys could absolutely make me look like a freaking idiot in the long run, but I think they will be towards the middle of the pack, but on the upper side of things, and be on the better half, which is the top 8. They've got guys returning. They do lose a few pieces to the transfer portal, but at least they've got a starting quarterback who knows how to keep his mouth shut about gambling. And their schedule is actually pretty favorable. I actually have them going 7-5, but I have them losing 2 key rivalry games, which is the game against Iowa in Iowa City, as well as losing to Kansas State, which I believe that game is in Ireland. But there's a few games that I'm thinking that Iowa State will pull out with victories. That might surprise some people. I have them beating UCF, but I also have them going on the road and beating Kansas, which the game is in Arrowhead. Now, there's a reason why I have it, because Iowa State travels well to Kansas City. And I would not be surprised if it's more favorable towards Iowa State in that environment than it is Kansas. So I think that will give the Cyclones the edge. But ultimately, 7-5, make a bowl game, should save Matt Campbell's job and basically become the winningest coach in Iowa State Cyclone football history. Could be wrong with that. But I think there are other teams that are just going to edge out Iowa State in terms of win-loss record in the conference. So I've got the Cyclones here in 8th.
7th, Arizona.
Losing their head coach was probably the reason why I have them this low. 7th, I've got another newbie to the Big 12, and that is Arizona. The Wildcats look poised to be a good and solid football team in this conference, but they have a new head coach. And I just don't know if they will succeed to the expectations of a lot of Wildcat fans on the West Coast. Gosh, I had to think that one through. Their schedule is pretty favorable for them as well. I think they could go 8-4 in this situation. 2-1 in non-conference play, which also includes a game against Kansas State that is technically a non-conference game. But I have them going 6-3 in the conference, losing to Utah, Texas Tech, and West Virginia, and winning the rest. All in all, I think Arizona will be fine. I think they'll be towards the middle of the pack. Maybe a couple years down the line, they'll be in the top tier of the conference, like a top 5, top 4 team. But I don't know if they'll end up being Big 12 title contenders for very long. So for right now, just because they have a new head coach, I think it's favorable for them, but I'm giving them 7th place.
6th, Kansas.
One of the most anticipated years in program history. I think the Hawks will do well, but they're not Big 12 title contenders just yet. Now, this team could do damage. The one thing that they need to make sure that doesn't happen at all is make sure that Jalen Daniels, Devin Neal, Daniel Highshaw, Luke Grimm, Lawrence Arnold, Quentin Skinner, Jared Casey, their entire offensive line does not get hurt at all. If one guy goes down, and most likely it'll probably be Jalen, but if one guy goes down on the offense, forget it. This team is going to stink. But if all the pieces line up perfectly and Jalen Daniels plays the entire season, this team could relatively go 10-2. And I know I'm being like crazy here, but also 11-1. However, for me personally, I've got Kansas going 9-3. I mean, I've got them winning all 3 of their non-conference games, which is against Lindenwood, going to Illinois and winning that, as well as winning the rematch with the Guaranteed Rate Bowl against UNLV. But the 3 losses are big and significant losses. I have them losing on the road at West Virginia, on the road at Kansas State, and also losing a home game in Kansas City against Iowa State. If Leipold can recruit, this team will probably be title contenders. But this year is probably going to be the last time that KU fans can really rejoice of having a good and decent football team. So I think it'll be a good one for KU, just not what people expect. So that's why I have the Hawks in 6th.
5th, Texas Tech.
Joey McGuire, do not let me down. 5th place, I've got Texas Tech. I could definitely see him being hyped a lot as a title contender, but I see shades of what could potentially happen with like another 7-5 or an 8-4 and they blow it. This year, I'm being a little bit more respectable. I think they'll be a solid and a good football team that could potentially make it into the top 20, maybe even the top 15 of the country. I honestly have them winning their first 10 games of the season and losing the final 2, which is to Oklahoma State and West Virginia. Like I said with Kansas, they just got to be healthy. And if they're healthy, they could realistically go 12-0 if they really wanted to. But I don't see that happening. I think 10-2 is very favorable. But those 2 losses to Oklahoma State and West Virginia will be costly. So they'll be in the top 5, but I have them 5th.
4th, West Virginia.
I honestly thought Country Roads was not going to be good last year. This year, they're going to be solid. Can the Mountaineers keep the consistency from what they did last year and improve or be the same? I think they'll improve. I think they've got a high-powered offense, a lot of guys coming back. They just need to make sure that they don't choke games, because there was a few times they choked games, i.e. the Houston one at the buzzer. I have the West Virginia Mountaineers going 9-3. Now, you might be wondering, why would you put a 9-3 West Virginia team ahead of a 10-2 Texas Tech team? Well, there's a reason. West Virginia, I think, will go 2-1 in non-conference play, losing their first game against Penn State. However, I have them beating Texas Tech, which actually puts them ahead of them, and then also losing 2 games as well in the conference season, which would be against Oklahoma State and Kansas State. Now, West Virginia could definitely win them both, but I really don't see the Penn State game going in their favor. I see them no better than 11-1, but I've got them 9-3. And since they edge out Texas Tech by beating them, in my opinion, I've got them 4th.
Third, Utah.
A lot of people's pick to win the Big 12. Not me. Third place is the final newbie of the Big 12, Utah. Cam Rising is back. I don't see him living up to the hype as he was like a couple seasons ago or last year. I think Utah will be a solid team this year. And the only reason why I have him missing out on the title game is because of one loss. And that loss is to Oklahoma State. I think that will cost them a shot at winning their Big 12 championship in their first year. But don't get me wrong, Utah is going to be a solid team, a top 15, maybe even top 12 team that just barely squeaks into the playoff. But I just see that one game against Oklahoma State not going in their favor and knocking them out. But solid, they make the podium. I've got the Utes in third.
Second, Oklahoma State.
After downplaying them to 11th place a year ago, I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt. Second place, I've got Oklahoma State, which is the same exact position they ended up finishing in last year when they made it all the way to the conference title game before getting thumped by Texas. And there is no question I think Oklahoma State will be in that same situation again, but they will not finish first. And one game will set them out of it, and that would be the game against Kansas State. But it would not surprise me because they've got a lot of guys coming back, especially the reigning Doak Walker running back of the year, Ollie Gordon. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes back-to-back. Please make sure that doesn't happen any running back ever.
Is that a challenge?
I wouldn't be surprised if he gets over 1,500 rushing yards. And he will carry that Oklahoma State team to the promised land, which might include a college football playoff berth. However, 11-1, I think that should pretty much be set in stone. I think they'll make the title game clear as can be, but I don't have them winning the conference. So, second place at best.
First, Kansas State.
Oh, it ails me to do it, and I might lose my KU fan card.
You're a phony!
But come on. This team is bound for glory. First place, give me Kansas State. I mean, you look at it. K-State has an incredible squad on paper. A Heisman caliber quarterback in Avery Johnson. If he does not get at least 2,500 yards passing and at least 800 yards rushing, I call it a dud season. In fact, I call it an even more dud season if Kansas State does not go undefeated. Because I have them going undefeated and making the college football playoff as the Big 12 champion. I mean, their schedule is somewhat of a cakewalk. Iowa State and Ireland, it's not a name, so that should be a dub. Kansas at home, that's a win. Oklahoma State at home, that should be a win because they thumped them and shut them out 2 years ago. This is basically Chris Klieman's Big 12 title to lose. If he does not win it, then I don't know. If I'm K-State's athletic director, I'd be looking for somebody else. Now, K-State, if you don't win this, you're going to make me look like a freaking idiot, but part of me would be kind of glad. With all that said, I've got the Wildcats, the Kansas State Wildcats, as my Big 12 champion. And with all that said, that's going to do it for this video of my Big 12 men's basketball results, as well as my Big 12 football predictions for the 2024 season. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Also, don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe, and push that notification bell, and tell your friends about these videos. I shall see you again when the next one comes out. But until then, have a good day. Never ever bring exotic dancers to the field house. I'll catch ya on the flip side. Peace.